of most of the cities that we have, Kansas City actually has the lowest unemployment, which surprised me. And if you want chasing yield and you want cash flow, Kansas City and Memphis are going to be the two standout cities, and especially as they have about 50% of the populace rent, which is handy for us as well. What we're going to have a look at now is how financing in the USA works. For all the serious investors out there, this is what we really want to know, because if you want to get ahead, you're going to have to finance. No two ways about it. The first thing we've talked about a little bit is about credit scoring. You know, what is a credit score? How do I secure one? Because eventually, as America turns full circle over the period of time, there's going to be more lenders out there lending based on credit score to Aussies and foreigners. A credit score is just a mathematical equation. It's a black box. As you'll see in a moment, there's a number of ways you can help to build that credit score. As I've said before, we don't need one initially to get a loan, but certainly once we do have one, it's going to be easier to get a loan. What makes up a credit score? 5 different areas there. All of it is common sense. It's nothing outside the box. It's very common sense. Payment history is by far and away the most important one. Are you making your payments on time? And one of the good things we're going to be bringing out is very soon we're going to bring out a US credit card. We've got a bank who's willing to do it. Up until now, people have been able to really get debit cards. So it's not credit, it's just using your cash. But soon we're going to be launching a credit card which will give you a credit history from day one. And with that credit card, as you'll see in a moment, the best way to get a credit history and credit score up is to pay it off in full every month. That's one of the keys to making that happen, to get the best credit score possible. What can affect your credit score? The biggest issue is going to be late payments. They don't like that. You've got to pay on time. Credit history, obviously. High balances. One of the things they don't really like is, like we have in Australia, you can max out your credit card at, let's say, 18%, then roll it over on an interest-free credit card or 1 or 2% interest rate for 12 months and keep doing that. And look, we have clients in our Australian business, we've told them to actually do that because they're running $25,000 at 18%. Why would you do that if you could take 12 months out at 0 or 2% and pay it off in 12 months? But pay it off, don't roll it over again. That's the trick. So look, it is a good thing for an Australian perspective, but in the US, it's not going to help you with your credit score. How can you improve your credit score? There's actually a website you can actually go to find out what your credit score is. Some of you have already sort of been doing some lending or have bank accounts and things like that. Just for a bit of fun, I'd actually go and do it and check it out and see if you register somewhere in the US at the moment. But that gives you a little bit of information about what you need to do. Basically, pay down your credit card in full if that's the first thing you have. Yes, sir.
Does your credit history in Australia, does the US take that into account or do they ignore that?
That's a really good question. Some lenders, let's say the easy answer is no, because our credit reporting system is completely different than America. But some of the banks over there who are what we would call full doc, meaning they need to know about you, they actually want us to give us your credit history report in Australia. So we're online with them in Australia Vita Advantage, so we do that for free for you. We put that together and we ask for a few other documents to build a credit profile. A reason we have to do that, and it might be 12 months of mortgage statements, could be 3 months of your credit card. There's a number of documents we're actually going to ask from you because A, you don't have a credit report in America, and B, our one over here, all it shows is how many times you applied for credit. Sometimes it shows how much you applied for, but it doesn't say whether you're approved, whether you were declined, or whether you actually took it up. In America, they know everything about you. On the credit report, they know your bank balances in every bank account, your credit card balances, your payment history, the lot. So they don't really like our credit reporting system, but ours is changing. So that's sort of, it is a bit different. But so with some banks, they don't care. But with some banks, we actually have to build a credit profile of you to get approved. And that's one of the reasons when Mark was up here, everything Mark's done, by the way, is via us, just so some people weren't clear about that. But one of the banks took a long time to get approved because they kept asking for things. I think they're actually asking for things hoping to decline the loan. Because it was actually the first loan they approved for a foreign national in 3 years. So we were very happy, but it took a bit of time to get it through. But it was a good deal, he's happy with it. Here's a bit of an overview of financing. Look, in the US, it is very different than here. And one thing I learned very quickly, they have got thousands and thousands of lenders, completely unlike us, where we're basically dominated by 4 and a few little ones under it. Over there, they've got heaps. And I've broken it down into certain types of lenders that they have. The first one is national banks. They're banks you may have heard of, like a Citibank, or say Bank of America is a classic, or Wells Fargo. Some of you I know have known them or got a bank account with them. Those sort of lenders used to lend up to 80% to foreigners. Very easy, no problem. But due to the GFC and due to them selling their mortgages off to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in most cases, they will no longer lend to us. Wells Fargo actually has a what we call, they do have a foreign national program, but they limit it to what we call second homes, which are like holiday homes, and we're going to talk about that in a moment, because there are ways and means of structuring things to get some pretty good deals in America, which we'll talk about shortly. They also deal with regional banks. These are banks that aren't all over in America, but they might be, say, West Coast or East Coast or Midwest, so they're only in areas where they have their branches, and that's a common theme. With community banks, who we mainly deal with, these are smaller banks who are in areas of a state. They may be across a couple of states, but they're only where their branches are. So one of our community banks we've just started dealing with recently, they have 20 offices across Florida, and they'll only lend in Florida. But they will lend actually all over Florida, even though they're not in some bits of it. And private lenders, that's really a grouping of a whole range of other types of lenders we have. Like, we've got an big insurance company down in New Mexico who also lends in Phoenix, because a lot of our clients like buying there. And that lender's just a big insurance company, and they put part of their investment portfolio into mortgages, which has been quite handy for our clients. We have hedge funds. There's lots of different types of lenders in America, and we're trying to find as many as we can to help our clients out. They'll lend on pretty much anything. They call it single-family homes. We just call them houses. They call them condos. We call them apartments or units. One of the type of security that people have been talking about are multi-family, where you've got multiple properties on the one title. They are very popular because the returns are higher, the yields. And most lenders that we have will lend against that sort of security property. In terms of how much they'll lend, so far we've been having loans between 40 to 75%. The highest LTV we've done is 75 and the lowest is 50%. But one of our banks is actually a Chinese bank, and they only lend in New York and in Florida. And they only lend 40% against the value of the property, but they'll actually do what's called cash out, which basically means if you already own a property, you paid cash for it, they'll come in there and give you equity against that property, which most lenders actually don't do. People get surprised about what they won't do over there, because lots of things we do over here and take for granted, they don't actually do over there. So this particular Chinese bank will do that, and they'll lend at 5.5% for 20 years. So it's a good deal, but they're only lending a small amount against the actual value of the property, and they only lend in 2 states, which is not great as well, but we deal with it. One of our new lenders we're going to talk about in a minute, they'll lend a little bit higher, but as you'll see, the higher the risk, the higher the fees and charges these lenders are going to charge you, which makes sense. In terms of products, pretty much every product in the States is a variant of a fixed loan. They have a loan they call variable, but their variable is what we would call fixed. They call it an ARM, or adjustable rate mortgage. And what it basically is, you can have a 3-1, a 5-1, a 7-1, a 10-1. What the first digit stands for is the initial fixed period. So if it's a 5-1 ARM, it's going to be, the rate will be fixed for 5 years. Then after that, the rate will refix for 1 year for the rest of the loan. So every 1 year, the rate will adjust up, down, or stay the same. And they call that a variable loan, but we wouldn't over here. And you can also have long-term fixed rates, 15, 20, 30-year fixed. So we could get a loan with a bank for, say, 5.5 or whatever it is, locked away for 30 years. Now, some of you would freak out if you've had long-term fixed in Australia and actually had to get out of it early and had huge break costs. We had a client 3 years ago who had a $184,000 break fee. They decided not to go ahead with it, but their loans were substantial. But in America, the great thing is, in most of the lenders we deal with, there's no exit fee. So it doesn't matter if the loan is 30-year fixed or 5-year fixed. Generally, there's no cost to get out of the loan at any time. No break fee, no discharge fee. They don't have it, which is a good thing. And that's what Mark was saying. He's been able to move his portfolio between products as they improve because it's very cheap to do that. In Australia, it's quite expensive to do that. Full doc, low doc and no doc. Look, no doc doesn't really exist so much now in America. That's what sort of helped them get in a bit of the dramas they got into. Most of our loans are full doc, where we need to provide income from you. If you are self-employed, and a lot of self-employed always get worried they can't get a loan. Look, if you can prove your income via either tax returns, or we can get a letter from your accountant, and we actually have a pro forma that they just fill in. It outlines what you earn, or if you have BAS statements to show you've got your business is turning over money, then in most cases you can get approved somewhere. So it's not all doom and gloom for self-employed people. Employees, it's simple. Just a couple of pay slips, or a letter from your employer stating what you've been earning in the last couple of years. So it's not hard at all. And the good rule of thumb is, look, if you can get a loan in Australia, and the loan amount's generally $300,000-400,000, you're going to be able to get a loan in America because it's probably $40,000 or $50,000. So it's a lot different and a lot easier to do that. In terms of interest rates, I always get asked, isn't America 0% or 1%? Can't I get a loan at that sort of rate? Well, you can't, because that's obviously what the initial rate is, and it goes to the banks and up it goes. The average rate in America is actually 6.25%. That's what the average American's on. The only way you can get it cheaper than that is by what your credit score is. So the better the credit score you have, the better the deal you're going to have across America. In terms of what we can do as a foreign lender, the cheapest loan we have at the moment is actually now 2.69, but we've got 2 under 3%. This one here is at 2.75. The one at 2.69, the minimum loan amount is $200,000, and they'll only lend at 50% LTV. That means you have to buy a property of $400,000 or more, and they'll lend in about 6 states. So some clients, we haven't yet had a loan for that lender, that bank, but if you want to buy a big property in somewhere in San Diego or somewhere, we've had 2 clients buy there, then that would be a great deal, because you can get a 30-year mortgage at 2.69%. So it's not too bad from a cash flow perspective. This particular lender though, and that's an investment loan, no problem. This lender at 2.75 can lend in 48 states, but they will only lend on what they call a second home, or what we would call holiday home basis. What that means is when you buy that property, you cannot have a lease in place at closing. It cannot be a rental property at closing. So you have to have an element of it being a holiday. You're going to live there at some stage and go for a holiday there, or friends or family are going to go in there. You can't have a lease on it. Look, down the track you might decide to turn it into a rental property. That's different, but up front it cannot be a rental property. Otherwise they won't do the loan. And Wells Fargo has a similar product, but at a much higher rate than what this is. So we do have a few of these sort of products. So in terms of what we supply, the areas we're in where this would apply, is an area like Southwest Florida. You can get a beautiful big 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom pool home on a canal, so you have a boat straight out to the Gulf of Mexico, from about $140,000 upwards. Those sort of properties are ideal because you can easily get seasonal renters that will easily cover everything, give you a net return, and away you go. Most of the other areas aren't really. Orlando, you get maybe a golf course property, that sort of thing. But you're not really going to go into Memphis or Kansas City to get a holiday home. You may, but probably not ideal. There's probably other better areas to do that. So certainly if you want to do that, you can get some really cheap rates, because for some reason they believe those are low risk than investment properties. I can't understand that reasoning, but that's what they're doing. One of the big differences between Australia and US is, in terms of fees, is a fee they have called points, but we don't have it over here. There's 2 types of points. One is called discount points. Discount points is an option that you can take up whereby you can pay the lender money up front, like a fee up front, and then you'll get a discount on the interest rate for the life of the loan. So it's a good deal if you're going to keep the loan a length of time, the property. If you're looking to sell the property in the first 2 years, look, you wouldn't do it. But if you're going to keep it, like most people, buy and hold strategy, then it's a great situation to have. And that's generally optional. It's not, you don't have to have it. It's up to you whether you want to take it. So generally, the fee might be, you might pay 2% of fee and maybe get a 1% discount on the interest rate. That's a sort of common scenario that you could do. The other type of point is just a pure fee, where they charge you either for being an investor, or being a foreigner. There could be a range of reasons why they do it, depending on the lender, but they'll charge you an upfront fee which is attached as a percentage of the loan. So 1 point equals 1%. So if the loan's $50,000, what's 1% of that is the fee, $500, and that's attached. Generally, it comes out of the loan amount, but a couple of our lenders will allow you to capitalise it, meaning that fee's just added on top of the loan amount, but not many do that at the moment. The minimum loan amount we can do is $30,000. The smallest loan we've actually done is $16,000, about just under 2 years ago. And the house is a $32,000 house, a small loan, like a personal loan. Even some of these that you're seeing on the walls, if you're getting a 50% loan, it's basically a personal loan, because the loan amount's like $30,000 or $21,000. You can get quite hefty loan amounts. The largest one we've seen is just under $1 million. I've got one client who's bought 2 condos down in Miami. They source them, we don't work in Miami. But one was 1.8 million or something, and one was about just over 1 million. Quite hefty. There is a type of lending that's been prevalent in America and a little bit in Australia in the last couple of years in America called hard money. Most people can't get loans. and there's a type of money that's come up. We used to call them, I suppose, solicitor funds, with something similar. Some of you may recall that, 15 years ago in Australia, sort of thing. But these loans are very high interest, they're high fees, and they're very short term. The biggest issue I have is the short term nature of it, because you have to have a very defined exit strategy. Because when you get into this, you have to get out of it. You cannot roll it over. And typically in America, investors over there are completely different than us. Their philosophy is what they call it flipping or selling. So you might get into a property and sell it very quickly. We don't have that over here because we pay capital gains tax, we pay stamp duties, so most people aren't going in and out of houses all the time over here. But because people tend to hold them short term, they tend to have these sort of products. But I'd suggest to people not really to go for one of those because it's too short a term, and you might have some problems getting out of it if you have to. If you think the market's going to go through the roof and you want to take a punt, well, okay, but we don't recommend them. The only other thing in terms of I want to mention here is some of you are going to go for full doc loans because we have some phenomenal products for bank loans under about 5.5%. Between about 4 and 5.5, there's a lot of them. But most of them, as when we talk about credit history, some of them will ask you to get what's called a credit reference letter. And what it basically is a letter from an institution you've been banking with or have a home loan or a mortgage or some sort of personal loan with. And it'll say basically you've been a good boy or girl, you've been paying your loans on time. And we have found that's the slowest part of the whole process, is trying to get your lender to give us this letter, which we've actually got templates to give you to go in there and get them to sign it. But we've found sometimes there's been delays in that happening. But we do need it because that's one way for the American lender to work out you're a good payer. And that's what they want to do. They don't want to lend to you if they're not a good payer, especially if they're going to give you 4.5% for 30 years. They want some sort of support.
Well, I mean, your loan statement would have shown those things.
All the loan statement shows is, even we provide 12 months mainly to these sort of banks. It just shows you've paid your loan on time, yes, but it doesn't show what's happened before then. So it only showed 12 months. These lenders want more reference to that. They actually want something on a letterhead from a bank to say you've been good. And there's a relationship there. See, a lot of these banks we deal with too are small. I mainly deal with presidents of these banks because some of those might be 4 branches or 6 branches. And they don't really want to lend to us, but they understand there is a bit of an opportunity in the market at the moment to lend to us. So we need to do whatever it takes to get a loan approved, and that's what they want. Some of the issues we've faced, one of the biggest issues I've had is most of the lenders we deal with are geographically based. And that's why we've actually decided that there's 10 cities we like, and they're the cities we're focusing on our energies to get the finance first. We'll deal with anyone, and we have a lot of clients ringing us saying, well, I mentioned San Diego, but they might want to buy New York or somewhere else, and we'll certainly help them. But our main energies are focused on the 10 cities that we have ourselves to get lending. But some of our lenders are national, but most of them aren't. Most of them are geographically based lenders. Security property. Some security is hard to lend against, which I've mentioned, these cheap houses. Banks don't make money if they're writing a $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 loan. They make money the bigger the loan size and the more interest they're going to make. So they prefer to lend on larger properties. Most banks who lend to foreigners would prefer a minimum loan amount of $100,000. They don't really want to lend under that. So that's been one of the biggest obstacles I've found, is finding banks or lenders to agree to lend less than $100,000 per security. And I ask all the time, can't I buy lots of little ones and put them all together and get one loan, which is common in Australia? We call it cross-collateralisation. In most cases, no. America does not operate that way. One loan, one house. We have found a couple of lenders who now will do, they call it blanket loans when they do that. We have got a couple who will, but majority will not do that. And that's why the people who, we've got a client in Phoenix at the moment, have bought all the properties. The highest price one was $35,000. They're all tiny little properties. And now they're trying to get us to do a loan for them, which the insurance company I mentioned before, they'll actually do it. But the minimum loan's $100,000, but they can pull these little ones together, which is interesting. But not all places we can do that. The last thing I want to mention on this slide is the bottom one. This is another thing which is completely different in Australia. A lot of the banks that we deal with have this thing called PITI. Some people call it PITI. What it stands for is principal, interest, taxes and insurance. Now, what that actually means is that when you make a repayment to that lender, you'll be paying the principal and interest repayment, which is say $300 a month, plus the taxes, which is the rates. So if the rates are $1,000 a year, just divide it by 12, and that's the amount that you'll pay that month. plus insurance. So if the insurance is $1,200 a year, you'll pay an extra $100 a month. So every time you make a repayment, you're actually paying all three components per repayment. So that way there, the lender is making sure you've made the taxes are being paid and the insurance is being paid. And a lot of our lenders actually do want you to do that. So it's not as if it's not a fee, it's just meaning you're paying for it on a monthly basis to make sure that when it comes time to pay your taxes, all the money's there to pay. So that's very common with the banks. Another thing that not all our banks do, but some do, they have a thing called cash reserves. What cash reserves are, if something goes wrong with you, the bank still wants to recover their money. And the only way they're really going to recover the money is off the asset you've got. They're not going to fly to Australia to recover a $30,000 mortgage. It's going to cost them a lot more than that. So they want to make sure this house that you've put up as security, they're going to get their money back. So one way they do that is they want you to deposit with them at closing of the loan or settlement, a percentage of the PITI. So let's just say this PITI is $500 a month. They might say you need to deposit with us 6 months of that amount in a account with us at closing. So that could be say $3,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is. So you would have to put that with them at closing, and then you can't touch that for a period of time. With some lenders, you can't touch it until you refinance or sell or pay out the loan. With others, they'll let you, one of our banks, which is a regional bank, they'll borrow 75% against the value of the property, but the cash reserves are equivalent to 25% of the value of the property. So they're really only lending you 50%, but it's like 4.4% or something for 30 years. So people want the deal. But they have to deposit 25%, and they'll actually give it back to you once the loan amount's down to 50%. So once they're back to 50%, you get your deposit back and you can do whatever you like with it. But that's how they work. So there's lots of quirks. Every lender we have, there's something going on which is different than Australia, but that's part of the fun, learning how all this works. This is one of the newer products we've got, brand new. We've got about 20 odd loans in with them at the moment. We sort of bombarded them as soon as we sort of came up with an overview. This lender says they can lend nationwide, which is great for us. It makes our life a lot easier. Minimum loan's only $30,000, which is good. They will lend to all structures, which is important. They actually will lend to what we call, and a few people have asked me about this, a proprietary limited Australian company. And why that's important is if you have a self-managed super fund and you want to borrow in America, the structure that the ATO we've been told will accept is if the super fund is controlled by what we call a bare trust. And the bare trust is generally what we call a corporate trustee, which is a proprietary limited company. Okay, so it's just a normal proprietary limited company. What the ATO wants, and I'm not an accountant, so check with your accountant or you can check with ours, is they want the lender in America to lend to the bare trust or the proprietary limited company. They don't want an LLC in the middle, which most accountants we've found have been telling clients to do. If you want to pay cash, no problem, set the LLC up. The LLC can pay cash as a protection mechanism. But if it's a loan, the loan has to be directly to the bare trust in Australia, which has caused me a lot of issues because most banks in America don't know what a proprietary limited company is for a start, and they don't really want to lend to an Australian structure. They want to lend to an American structure or yourselves. So we've now found a couple of banks who will actually lend to that structure. Now we're at the stage of providing the bank's mortgage documents in America to our accountant and super fund lawyer over here to make sure they're happy with it. And the three lenders we've got are all willing to change their mortgage documents to comply with the ATO because they know how big the market is, which is great. So one of the banks that will do that will lend in Memphis and Atlanta. This one pretty much will do anywhere, and the other one's based down in Phoenix. So they're the markets we've got sort of covered at the moment in terms of super funds. This particular lender is one of the few lenders we have who will look at doing interest-only loans, or will do interest-only loans. Almost every bank we deal with is only principal and interest. They want you to pay the loan off. It's a way of minimising their risk to you, which makes sense. This lender will do generally 3, 5 or 7 years fixed. They will actually go to 10 years fixed if the loan amount's big enough. Not for small loans, they don't want to do that. They will lend in bands, and as it goes up and how much they'll lend you as opposed to property, the interest rate also goes up. And this lender has points. This actually had discount points. You might recall 2 slides ago I talked about that discount point thing. This lender actually has that. So this interest rate can go up and the points can go down. You can muck around with it. And so when we do one-on-ones, we can certainly talk about those sort of structures. And the good thing is this lender has no exit fees as well. So you can get in day 1, out day 4. It doesn't matter. There's no fees to do that. This is a spreadsheet.
Do they do blanket loans?
Sorry, I'll just go back. Whoop. Yes,
Yes.
they do.
Right.
So I missed that. Too much content on there. This is an overview of funding position we do with our clients. Look, we think it's very important that you understand exactly all your fees and charges, costs, all the little bits and pieces, the fine lines when you're buying a property. So we put this together, and most of our clients, when you're buying over there, you might dip your toe in and buy one, but ideally, if you're going to buy in America, there's no real point buying one, because you've got all your setup charges, your accounting costs, your LLC stuff. It just doesn't make economic sense to buy one. So most of the clients, when we talk through them, it's about building a portfolio, and that's what we're about, trying to put a system in place to help you build a portfolio. And we've designed the spreadsheet so that we can fit 8 on here anyway, and it drills down. This lending was at 75%, and at the end of the day, we want to work out how much money we need in Australian dollars to close these loans from the Australian perspective. We actually factor in a buffer of 9% if the exchange rate moves against you. So if you buy today and you're not settling for, say, 30 days, the exchange rate could move. So we need to make sure you've got enough reserves to cover the exchange rate movement. But one of the benefits of what we do is that, which I haven't mentioned, we use what's called a foreign exchange dealer, or they're called AFEX, the ones we now use. Initially, I used a bank when I made my first one, so I hadn't really dealt in those markets, and I thought I got a good deal. But as soon as I came across a foreign exchange dealer, I could have saved myself $600 in my first trade. But anyway, you learn. So we now use a foreign exchange dealer. It's a very large one. They're American-based, but they have offices in Australia. And our clients don't pay, there's no setup charges or ongoing fees. And they charge a margin between what the market rate is and what you see on the television. And their market rate's about a fifth of the bank. So it's a very cheap way of transferring money. So they do that for us. And they can actually book forward your deal for our clients. So that means if you buy today and you need to transfer $100,000 to America, you can actually lock in today's rate if you want, but don't have to pay for, say, 30 or 40 days. So what you're doing is you're hedging against what's going to happen. Not all foreign exchange dealers will do that, but these guys will do it for us. So if you think the market's going to go against you, just lock it in. And that's a great way of doing it. What we also do is we have this cash flow position. And this is actually, again, a spreadsheet with eight properties you can have on it. And when it drills down, we put in all the bits and pieces of what's going to happen on a property. We include the vacancy and maintenance and all the things that we know what's going to happen. And it drills down to what a return is, a net return on the property, and also then a gross portfolio return as well. We want our clients to actually know if they're making money. I think it's important, not just what the gross return is, but we want to work out what the cash flow is going to be. Because I hazard a guess at the moment, if you cannot make a positive return just on the basic expense of the property, I probably wouldn't do it, because we don't know what's going to happen with capital growth. You can take a punt if you want, but there's so many opportunities in America where you can actually make some money. I think that's a known quantity, and I think that's a better strategy to focus on ones where you know you're going to make some money from day one. Because you feel pretty happy when you do your tax return, actually you've made a profit. It's pretty good. What are the costs of buying a property? In terms of, I've just put an example here of just a little one in Memphis at $55,000, which is about an average price. Some of the differences that we don't have, that they have over there, is a thing called a title company. The title company is like a conveyancing firm. And on average, they charge $400 to $500 to do what they basically do over here. Most conveyancing or title company firms are owned by attorneys, which we call solicitors. And they tend to act for both parties. They tend to act for the seller and they tend to act for the buyer. And they obviously have insurance to cover them in that regards. You have to take out that title insurance, and that's that one-off premium you pay to make sure your title's clear. So there's no tax liens or judgments or anything like that owing against your property. And that varies. It's a mandated fee, so that as your property value goes up, the amount of title insurance you pay goes up as well. But it's not a huge increase. Hazard insurance, that's what they call just a building and liability insurance. Again, that varies depending on where you're buying. In Memphis, because they have so many properties under management, they've got a group scheme, and that saves them about $250 a year. So you're paying about $500 instead of about $750 in that marketplace due to the group scheme nature. And that also depends on how much liability you take out. We've seen a lot of insurance companies automatically will give you $250,000 to $300,000 liability. That particular one's $1 million. Again, we've spoken with attorneys who've been practicing in property law for 50 years and they've never heard of a claim. And I've asked the property managers who've come over here, have you heard of anyone being sued? And Dave, in his 27 years, they've had about 3 times, and 2 of them got thrown out, and the third one didn't get anywhere anyway. And that's why we have liability insurance. But People always get worried, oh, they're so litigious in the States, and that's what I thought too, but it doesn't seem to be in the property instance, maybe in other aspects of business, but not so much in owning an asset than what we've seen anyway. You pay recording deed. The deed is the title. You pay recording fees and also state tax, but instead of 15,000, 20,000, whatever the stamp duty is, it's quite minimal. If you're getting a loan, say in Florida, and the loan's a bit bigger, then you could pay $300-400 in duties there, but overall the actual costs are a lot cheaper. We encourage everyone to get a home inspection report or building inspection report. It is a third-party report, so you'll receive that. You can analyse it, you can speak to the inspectors, and if there's things on that report which aren't up to standard or need to be fixed, then we'll go back to the property people to get them to fix it and take photos and make sure they're done before you close the property or thereafter. In most cases, those reports are $250 to $400, again, depending on what state you're in. Pest inspections. Look, their pests are nowhere near as bad as ours. Their termites, which we cover off, aren't the killer termites that we have over here, we've been told, but look, we want our clients to make sure that the property's tip-top, so we make sure you get that. So the overall entry cost from a property perspective is not huge, which makes it easier to keep buying as well. You're not paying $20,000 each time you want to buy a property. In terms of Loans USA, as I said before, we have an ASIC licence, so we are licensed in Australia to lend in America, but we're not an American finance broker. What that means is we can't claim or get fees off any of the banks or lenders that we deal with in America, which actually turned out to be a good thing, because in America, most of the lenders we deal with don't deal with brokers over there. So that's why we found it a bit easier, I think, to get lenders than what American brokers have, because they'll only deal with banks over there who'll pay them a fee or a commission. But because none of them pay us, they're actually happy to receive our business because it's delivered to them on a plate. We charge our clients a fee. That's how we make money from a loans perspective. There's a range of things that we do, which I won't all go through. Our clients who come to us via the internet or just they found their own property somewhere and they want a loan in wherever it may be, we will definitely service them. We charge a flat fee of $3,300 for the first property and $2,200 for thereafter. If the client's bought a property through either our company or one of the other, it's about 5 or 6 other companies that we finance their company's properties, we charge a lower rate of $2,200 per property or $1,650 thereafter. We find it much easier to deal with companies where we already know what they're selling in areas that we've got financed. If we have to go into a state or an area we don't have any lenders, it's going to take us a lot longer to service those. We prefer not to do that. At the moment, we have limited staff. We don't advertise, so we're pretty much nearly at capacity anyway, so we're happy with what we're doing. But we are growing. We've got about 10, 12 staff now, so the place is getting a bit bigger. What it's all about is how to fast track your results, and that's really how this whole program's been put together over the last couple of years, because people want to get ahead. Once they want to dip their toe and they want to get ahead, and look, we've got a number of clients in the place here who've actually bought properties and are moving forward. I just want to talk to, say, one of those now. Tom, maybe if you want to come up, we'll just do a quick Q&A. You spoke to Mark before. There's a couple of people here, and Kim will have a quick chat later. I think Melinda's spoken to you. So a different perspective. Again, putting them on the spot, but they're happy to have a quick chat about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And when you chat to them later, I'm sure they're happy to talk about their experiences. And maybe, Tom, if you mention the folks where you bought and what you bought.
Yeah, I was talking to a couple of people at lunchtime, so it'll probably be old news for them. But I bought a place last year in Cape Coral in southwest Florida. I settled on that around about August for $96,000 US. Exchange rate that I locked in was about 106.5.
Nice.
So yeah, it's gone down a couple of points then, but yeah, who knows? But the point is, I guess it hasn't gone down massively. I rented out at $900 per month. And I'm in the process of changing property managers because the property management has been the major issue in that period of time of ownership.
And how have you, with that property manager that came on board there, what have been the major issues that you've had with that process?
Lack of communication, Steve, and lack of initiative. So, once again, I can see some people who probably have heard this before, but you know what happens with me is it gets to the 10th of the month and I look at my Wells Fargo account and I see that it hasn't been paid, and I email the person and I say, what's going on? And then a couple of days later I'll get say, the tenants are having issues. Like, I didn't know that. Anyway, so I then get Mel from Loans USA on the case and try and rattle a few cages, and eventually get paid. But I've had a couple of other sort of maintenance issues that were early on that were a surprise, not a nice surprise. I think they were probably things that happened, though I was upset about them at the time, and I made my feelings known to the people over there. So yeah, it's been, like I say, property management. I know that I've been around property enough to know that these things happen, but you want, because it's a long way away, you want to have the comfort that someone's working for you, they know what they're doing, and they're going to follow a process. That's what I haven't had, and that's what hopefully Dave will bring to the table.
The reason I want to get Tom up here is that he's bought in a great area of Florida, but what I really want to express to people is that property management is the key. And with the Loans Group and APP, we are very focused on making sure that the managers do a good job. And one of our last trips over there, we have a couple of clients like Tom who bought in that area and weren't having success with this property manager. Regardless of whether they're ours or not, it doesn't matter, it wasn't, but we feel responsible if they're getting loans or coming through us and we know who they are, we want to help these clients out. And so on our last trip over there, I got introduced to 2 other groups in the area, and I spoke to both of them, and I ended up going with the group that Dave's part of. And so far, the experience that they have and the fact that they only deal with internationals is a big thing. The manager that Tom has bucked my normal model, because there was a realtor and it was the realtor's property manager, not in-house, so 2 separate companies. And what we found from our perspective is that the realtor passed the buck. So if there was an issue with the management, and correct me if I'm wrong, and you go back to the realtor to fix it, say, not my issue, go and speak to the manager. And look, from my perspective, that's not acceptable. And that's why every other area, we don't have that, and now we don't have that in Southwest Florida. So we're hoping that, I know Dave and Brad, who's not here, are going to deliver a much better service to our clients. And look, because we have volume of clients, it's easy for me to say, if they're not performing, we're going to move them. And they want our business. They don't really care about one client, but they care about 100 clients. And Dave and Brad and the team in Southwest are very focused on making sure our clients get a result. And that's why I'm happy for you to hear the good, bad and the ugly from clients, because that way there you'll understand that there is someone, you need someone, I believe, in your corner to support that. And maybe if you can talk a little bit about your experience, say, with Melinda and how she's tried to coordinate all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So my purchase was for cash. But I've been dealing with Mel throughout that process, and she's been really good at following up on my behalf and like I say, rattling cages. So her responsiveness is a lot quicker than what has been my experience in the with America. So yeah, once again, it's a long way away. So it's actually quite nice to have someone locally that you can talk to about it and who'll be on your case and who understands, I guess, your own frustrations, because coming into the process, I really thought America was the bastion of technology, and that this was a level that I'd have to lift up to.
Yeah. It is a surprise, isn't it?
It is a surprise.
It's not that way at all.
It's
We are more
absolutely
advanced.
not. We are. Mate. We don't think of ourselves as being like that, but we are. So. It's been really good to have Mel. It's been really good to have Mel there, Steve.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming up and sharing your time.
No worries.
Thanks, Tom. We might just quickly hear from Kim as well. Kim's very gladly, would like to come up and have a couple of words about your experience. Kim's actually purchased in a different area of America, so it's good to hear from that perspective as well.
Hi everyone. I've bought 4 properties in the US. It's coming up to about the anniversary now. The first 2 were in Memphis, in Tennessee. I bought one in Atlanta in about October. Those 3 via Loans USA, and I also bought one in California, but I did that privately. My sister found a property and she'll rent that directly for me, so I don't need rental managers, and let's hope she pays the rent.
Your sister's in that one, isn't she?
Yeah, she hasn't started paying rent yet.
Oh,
actually.
no.
She's been renovating at those, so she's adding value apparently. So yeah, it's about a year now that my first 2 Memphis ones were purchased. Had a few issues in the first few months, but I did have rental guarantees. At least on one of them. One of them I wasn't supposed to have a rental guarantee, but I don't think the agent knew that, and I got a couple of months rent out of him.
Nice.
I also had issues with the rental manager that was there at the time. That's changed over. I think he was bought out by the new company in Memphis in January. They've been a lot better. I mean, They've got a good team of people. They're very professional. They have actual statements that come out every month, which is a great thing, and very easy to understand. They've got a portal where you can see the invoices that are for maintenance, and you can see your rental income. Very good responsiveness with them in Tennessee. The Atlanta guys are quite good too. They're called Vestlet Realty. Have no problems with them. They've also got a portal. I can see maintenance work orders as they've come up before they're actually paid, and then that invoice will come off my rental each month. That's only been, I've only had that a few months, but really liked Atlanta actually. That was a really interesting place to go and visit, and I like that as an investment opportunity. So I've kind of got the one in Atlanta as potential capital gain down the track, and the two Memphis ones are more my cash flow properties. The one in California should be capital gain. It will be negative cash flow just because it's a much more expensive property. But actually 2 days after I bought that one, someone offered me 50 grand more than what I paid for it. But that was a 275 grand property on half an acre in California, as opposed to a slightly different economic area in Memphis. But as you know, some of these guys said, you might not necessarily you might not necessarily want to live in these kind of areas, but people do, and they need to rent, and they work, and it's not necessarily an area I'd live in myself, but I've visited them. They exist, which is great, and I've met with the rental managers over there, and we have good communication.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thanks, Kim. I think it's important. A lot of people, I think, don't need to be convinced that you should be looking at America as an opportunity, but some people need to know that other people are doing it and what's going on. And as I said, the property management, again, I think is a critical factor, and hopefully by the end of the day you've heard from a range of managers and what they do, and will give you some confidence to move forward with your investing. What we'll quickly have a look at now is how you're going to fast track your process. And that's really what Loans USA and American Property Partners are all about. This is a sort of a model that we've put together really over the last couple of years, but certainly some of the aspects like the USA finance is ongoing on a day-by-day basis. But really the idea of what we've done is we've put together a process whereby everything that you would need to do to have a successful transaction is taken care of. There's nothing really that you need to do to go outside of the model. It is a turnkey model. You can certainly do any of these aspects yourself. We have one of our clients get their own building inspection report on 2 properties in Atlanta, and it was a 95-page building inspection report, which was fairly intense. But this is how good our people are in Atlanta. They spent about, I think, 6 weeks fixing every minute detail which was on that report, and some of those were unbelievable. The property was, I think, about 30 years old, and the driveway had some cracks in it, which you would think maybe of a 30-year-old driveway. But they wanted the property company to fix the cracks in the driveway, which they did. But now that client is unbelievable, and yesterday they bought 4 more properties because of the great experience they had through the Atlanta people we have. But everything that you would need we have, which is a good thing. Even on the outside, so when you want to sell your properties, all the people that we have will also help you sell your properties down the track if you want to do that. As I mentioned, again, our model is that the people we deal with in all the 10 cities, they buy them, they renovate them, and they manage them. We won't deal with anyone who doesn't manage the properties, because for us that's the most critical aspect of the whole thing. If they're just selling properties, well, they don't really care, as far as I'm concerned, what your long-term return is going to be. Property management, that's the key. Property finance, well, that's what our real focus is, to try and leverage. So we're looking for properties and to deal with groups where we can finance their properties. If we can't finance their properties, we don't want to deal with them, and they can just sell their own properties for cash. Ongoing market and education research. We believe it's imperative that at some stage, hopefully, you'll go to America, because there's one thing looking at all these pictures on the walls and the returns are fantastic, but once you get over there and actually experience it yourself, see what's going on, we believe you'll find it's way better than what you thought. Everywhere I go, I want to buy. So it's just a matter of how much money I can get. That's why I spend so much time looking for lenders in America, so I can keep buying more and more. And once you get a hold of that and understand it, I think you'll have the same sort of thought process. We have, as I mentioned, our next tour in June. It would be great to have a few of you on that tour, because we're going to cover most of the cities in the room on that tour. There's a 10-night option and a 6-night option. It'd be great to see you there. And also after sales client service is a big part of what we do. As I said before, we're calling it a portfolio management. That's what we're really doing. We're trying to help you build your portfolio over the next 2 to 3 years where we see the real opportunity is. One thing I've put into place is a thing called a property rating system that you'll see when our new properties are coming out to you. You'll see these properties are going to have a rating system on them and an explanation of what we're talking about. The reason I've done this is that unfortunately when people buy a $35,000 property or $80,000 property, a lot of people think the performance of the asset is going to be the same, but it's actually not. So what I'm trying to do is educate people as to what to expect from the investment they're buying. So if you're buying what I would call a cash return investment where you're mainly looking for cash flow, that's going to perform differently than an asset which is mainly going to be a capital gain focused asset. Like Kim just said, she bought a property in California for $275. Look, there's no cash flow, it's negative. But it's going to have a capital gain focus and it's going to perform differently than a little $50,000 property in Memphis, no doubt about it. And these particular cash flow ones, you're going to get a much higher yield. That's the idea, but the capital gain is going to be a lot lower. Some cases, 1-2%, if that. That's what we're really going to be looking at. We're going to rate those a 2 or 3 star property. The big issue with these sort of cash returners is the exit strategy. The cheaper the property, generally, as I've mentioned, the harder it is to move the property or to sell it when you want to sell it. Less people want to buy it, less owner-occupiers will want to buy it, people can't finance it. So you just have to understand the asset you're getting into, what the risks are. So we're trying to do that so people have much better understanding, because everyone else in Australia is selling property, people have absolutely no idea what they're buying. They don't know really what an urban core is or where it is or how the asset's going to perform. That's why I want to bring these people out from America to explain to you how your asset's going to perform and where you're buying it. Balanced return, this is where you want to get some yield but also have some potential that you're going to get some money back on the gain side. These sort of properties here are going to be in your 75 or say 60 odd to $100,000 mark in most of the cities that we deal in, whether it's in Houston or Dallas or any of our other ones. We're going to be rating these a 3 or 4 star. These are ones where you'll be able to sell to an owner-occupier and they'll be able to get a loan. So these, for some people, these are going to be the ideal. You're going to be able to sleep better at night with these than you will with, say, a 2 or 3 star where there's going to be perhaps turnover issues of getting how long it's going to take to get a tenant in, more issues of, like Tom said, you can have the fact your rent's during the first, it's meant to be there, paid on the third, but it doesn't come in. So if you don't want that risk factor of trying to chase rent or waiting for the rent, then you wouldn't buy one of those sort of properties. In most cases, with these sort of properties, the rent should be paid on time in most cases with these sort of properties. You're going to get a better quality of tenant. And then you focus on the higher capital gain type ones. With these ones here, the gross yields are going to be a lot smaller, but again, they're probably going to be at least double what we get over here. And that's only because their market's collapsed. So you're not going to really focus on these in sort of the more cash flow type cities. It's going to be more in the high full closure cities, the ones which have really suffered a lot and then will have the bounce back effect. These sort of properties are generally going to be over about the $100,000 mark, and we'll be rating these a 4 or 5 star because these are ones you can easily get out of. These are the ones where you're going to get some capital gain, but you're making cash flow. So don't write these off as not getting any cash flow. They will make you cash flow. And these are much better chance of getting financed against at much better rates. So here you might get a loan of 4.25% over 30 years. Even though it's P&I, the actual outlay, the mortgage payment is not that much. So you can cash flow these out of the rent, pay your cost, pay your mortgage, still a lot of cases be cash flow positive, but with a massive kick side to get capital gain. The only downside to it is you're spending over $100,000 a property, whereas most people I've talked to in Australia are sort of being conditioned so far for most companies to spend 50, 60, 70,000. So again, it's a different strategy depending on what you want to do. But most markets we see, you can actually get into these sort of properties. So in summary, look, we believe if you hopefully have at least a five-year window, if not more, you're going to do really well. Obviously, you're going to make money, we believe, straight away on the currency at that point in time, and then you're getting cash flow from day one with the potential gain in the capital growth. So there's lots of ways to make money. Again, some people might want to mix and match, so they might want to have some capital gain sort of properties mixed with some yield properties. And that's why we've brought over lots of different areas for you to have a look at. We're going to have a little bit of a look at in a minute in Memphis and Atlanta. So you can combine some cash flow areas like Memphis and Kansas City with some capital growth areas like Atlanta, Cape Coral and Orlando. So that's just up to whatever your strategy is going to be. This is a service we've put together that everyone you've heard of, and especially Mark's been doing it the longest out of the people we've had today. But we're calling it Portfolio Management Service because it's a service we are very hands-on. We talk to our clients a lot to help make sure they get where they need to go. So we generally appoint one person to deal with you, to help build your strategy. It's not a 5 or 10 years sort of hold your hand. It's more so a very intense 2 or 3 year period where we hope you're really going to build your portfolio very quickly. And that's what we focus on. We don't really want to deal with people who just want to buy one property. It's not what we're set up for. We're not a huge company. We're a small company. We want to deal with people who want to build a portfolio. That's really what who we want to work with. What we've decided to put in place is this 72-hour first look release. We get a lot of demand for certain areas, but the problem is supply. We have a large database of where we send properties out to people, and we might get, say a duplex. They go very quickly. Everyone wants a duplex because of the cash flow. And so if we get, say, 3 duplexes that month and we send it out to 5,000 people, we don't think it's fair that people who aren't really clients can maybe buy this over someone who is. So what we're going to do is we're going to give all the new properties that come on every week, they will go out to our portfolio clients first, and they've got 3 days to decide if they want it. If they do, that's great. If they don't, we'll then put it on our website. We haven't actually built a website yet, but we are going to. So actually we're going to put all the properties on the website, and that will come up in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So you'll be able to log on to just americanpropertypartners.com.au and see all the properties, and also lots of information on all the 10 areas that we're involved in as well. So you'll be able to go on there and pick, but they will go out to our portfolio clients first, and they'll get first choice. So I don't know what's going to hit the website. We'll just have to wait and see. Also, what we're going to do, because some of the lenders we work with are fairly intense, as Mark Taylor told you, one of the loans we did took 3 months, and that was the first loan we did with that lender in that area, which is first foreign national loan they've done in 3 years there. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to give priority service to our to Loans USA and IPG to the clients who are buying properties through APP. So they'll actually jump the queue a bit. If other clients are in there, we'll actually prioritise them, which is just what we decided to do. And we are actually doing webinars, so all of our portfolio clients, our partners in America, our accountants and attorneys that you've met briefly today, we're going to have those on a webinar for Q&As with our clients, and only our portfolio clients will get access to that. So they'll be able to speak to them instead of flying to America or whatever. They'll actually be able to just jump on a webinar and have a chat to these people about their situation and structures and things like that. So we think that's a good benefit. What we're also doing, as you saw earlier, for our clients who buy properties through us, they get quite a large discount off what we charge out on our Loans USA side. And also, as I mentioned before, we really want people to go to America, and so all of our clients get a 15% discount off their first tour. And as you saw on the flyers, we always have an early bird special, so if you pay by a certain date, you always will get 15% off that anyway. So if anyone pays by, I think it's April 6th or something like that, then you'll get 30% off your first tour, which is about $3,000 for 11 nights, which when you look through what you get is a pretty good deal, to say the least. In terms of what we charge for our service, we've got 2 options. Up until now, most people have taken the bottom option, which is just a straight fee per property. But what we're encouraging people to do is take option 1, which is what we call a 5-pack. It's for people who want to build a portfolio quickly, and that's really what we want people to do. Certainly you can go one by one, we've got no issue with that at all, but really we want to try and encourage people to commit to buying a range of properties over a 12, or it can extend out a bit, but most people want to get going fairly quickly. So if you take a 5-pack, it's now $6,600, which works out to $1,200 plus GST a property, which once you start using our service, I think you'll see that that's very well worth it. We are a very time-focused company, and we will do whatever it takes to get you happy. As you've seen that, we've replaced 2 of our property managers in the last 12 months. So we'll do whatever it takes to make sure our clients get a result, because in most cases, they're also my managers. So I want a result for myself with the properties I own and are building up as well. We have a set process that you go through when you're buying a property. There's about 13 steps, and we hold your hand throughout all those steps. So we'll organise insurance quotes for you on the properties, we'll organise the building inspection reports. If the building inspection report comes back with issues on it, we'll then go back to the property groups to make sure they are fixed and done. And it's a lot easier for us to do that than probably sometimes yourselves to try and negotiate that from 12,000 miles away. That's part of what we do, is that part of our service. We've also negotiated a bulk deposit of only $3,000 per property. So it's not a 10% deposit. So even if it's $200,000, it's still $3,000 per property as a deposit, which is I think is a good deal. But I won't go through all those things. But there's 13 steps, and our foreign exchange deal is phenomenal. They'll actually ring you and coordinate the transfer of monies from Australia to America. They'll also talk to you about locking in forward contracts if it's appropriate or not. So they'll actually hold your hand throughout the whole process, because a lot of people have never transferred money overseas before, so they need a little bit of help to understand how that works. So we do that. What I'm going to do now is have a bit of a chat. Unfortunately, we've been on a 2.5-week tour, and our Memphis and Atlanta people actually flew home last night. For some reason, they thought we were finishing yesterday, even though we told them we weren't. But they haven't changed their tickets. They decided 2.5 weeks was enough for them, and they've flown the coop, which is a bit disappointing. But they've had a long tour here, and they've done very well. But some of you know them, and we've had them over here now 4 times in the last bit over 12 months. We have over 155 properties they manage and have bought. Our clients have bought through them, which is a fantastic result. And we love getting them back over here because they deliver cash flow. And they deliver cash flow, they deliver results. And we've found if there are any issues with their properties or management, they get them resolved. And that's what we don't want. We don't want a property manager passing the buck or a realtor passing the buck. We want them to take responsibility for their asset. That way our clients are going to get a result and can continue to grow. So I am, shall we say, very familiar with what they do. I've been to Memphis about 6 times. So I'm actually going to deliver the Memphis part of it. And I think a lot of the questions you may ask, I may be able to answer. So let's go through it and have a look at Memphis. Has anyone been to Memphis? Just a couple of people. Okay. And both of you own in Memphis, which is good. So you're going to be familiar. Memphis is a big city compared to what we think it is. It's about 1.3 million people and about 650,000 in the inner metro area. It's mainly known in the early days for music. I'm sure, hopefully, both of you, when you're over in Memphis, you strolled down Bill Street at night, did you? Yes, lots of... During the day? Next time, definitely go at night as well. It's a fantastic street. It's a bit like Bourbon Street in New Orleans. It's full of life, full of music, and it's a good time. It's also famous for paddle boats and steamboats as well. What Memphis is really known for is it's a home of FedEx. When we look at Memphis, we're looking at cash flow. Nearly 50% of Memphis actually rents, which is a great thing if you're wanting a rental income. It is a blue-collar town. So don't get me wrong, you're not looking at executives in towers, you're looking at people who work in distribution predominantly. FedEx is obviously the overnight couriering company you've a lot of heard of. The home of FedEx is in Memphis, and they employ about 35,000 people just in FedEx. Why it makes it so important is because there's all these ancillary businesses around FedEx. What we mean is pharmaceuticals has taken off there. I'm not sure if you realise this when you're over there, but there's so many pharmaceutical companies who have their distribution headquarters there. So the warehousing's there, so they order all these drugs and bang, off they go out of Memphis, off to somewhere in the world. And how FedEx works is that if you're in LA and you want to send something to New York, it actually goes via Memphis. And then late that night, bang, it goes off to its next destination. So anywhere in America and sometimes even in Australia, flies into Memphis and out it goes in each direction. It's quite amazing to actually see the flights going in and out. It's got its own airport basically. So a lot of it is distribution, blue collar, lower income, but when you live there, the cost of living is one of the cheapest in America. It's very cheap to live in Memphis. The rents aren't huge. You're getting anywhere between about $600 on the low end to about $1,200 on the absolute maximum high end that we've seen. So and that's per month, not per week. So it's a very affordable place to live. Again, it is the home of the blues. When you go down Beale Street, which is the main street, there is a place called B.B. King's. And yes, it was his, and yes, he does occasionally play there. So if you like the blues, you'll love going to Memphis. It's a fantastic experience in that regards. One of the big things that I want to do next year is they have a barbecue cook-off. It's very famous. It's in May. It sounds awful, but it's phenomenal. It's like a big party. And you have a tent. So people have a tent there and they barbecue whatever they're barbecuing, but it's a whole festival over a weekend. It is amazing. They're big sponsors. They raise a lot of money, and there's thousands and thousands. I think 150,000 people go to it. It's very large. That's what they're known for. As I said before, it is a distribution capital of America. Geographically, it's in the centre of America. It has the I think it's the I-4, I-5 going across the middle. and it has the Mississippi River going from Chicago all the way down here and out to the Gulf. So it's right in the middle of that. It has a river going right through the middle of Memphis, and they have huge barges going up and down there all the time, delivering goods up and down there. It is a huge cargo airport. As you can see, it's number 2 in the world in terms of cargo. And it has a couple of other major companies, AutoZone, International Paper, and as I said before, it's a major medical and health area as well. One of the areas which we'll get into where some of the clients have bought has a massive new Nike distribution centre, which is in the northern part of Memphis, in a place called Raleigh. A lot of people like investing there because there are a lot of jobs in that area, and that's one of the reasons they look at that area as well. It is within 50%, Memphis is within 650 kilometres of 50% of the US population. So again, that's one of the reasons why it is a distribution headquarters. As I said before, we've looked at the population, the renters. Top 10 cities to invest in real estate, Business 2.0 said. And it is a hotbed of activity. There are a lot of companies focused on Memphis, focused on investment properties because the returns are so high. And not only are they high, they're actually stable. There are certain parts of Memphis you can invest where, again, you're talking C-grade or 2 or 3 star properties where the returns are going to be a bit more unknown, but certainly the yields are going to be there if they actually happen. No doubt about that. Has very low real estate prices. It is a market that didn't have the wild swings up and down. It's a very stable market. It only went down 25 on average percent, not like Florida and Georgia and Las Vegas, which went down 50, 60, 70%. It's a more stable sort of market. Does have no state income tax and low cost of living, and like the other states that we focus on, it is very landlord friendly. It's very, very easy to evict people in Memphis. A process is about 4 weeks on average to get someone out. And with the group that we work with, Memphis Investment, it's due on the 1st, late in the 5th, and if they haven't paid, in a couple of days after that, they'll actually go and nail a full rent sign on the door. Just to make sure they understand their rent is due, and if they don't pay, they're out. And they are a well-oiled machine. They manage 1,300 properties in Memphis. They have, as you'll see in a moment, a very large team, and they certainly are on top of the rental management game. That's why we like dealing with them. That's a bit about the area. Best place to live, rich. It's a great place to live if you earn any sort of income because it's so cheap. And it's a great city for home buyers as well. It has a bit of a vibrant nightlife, as you'll see. It's home of the Memphis Grizzlies. That's basketball's their main sport there. That's the big NBA they have over there. And this FedEx Forum was built only recently. It's one of the second newest stadium in America. It's a great place to go. Memphis actually got to the playoffs in 2011. I was actually at that game. Well, fortunately they lost, but they had triple overtime, which they drew, then they played again, they drew again, they played again, and unfortunately they lost. But it was an amazing experience to be there during that time. Has a very vibrant downtown, very historic. A lot of people, there is vibrant activity in there. It's certainly, in most cases, most people aren't going to live downtown. Brad, who was here, Brad Reedy, he actually lives downtown, right next to this building called the Peabody. He lives. So the young sort of people live there. It's not what we call the urban core. It's just outside the city, the CBD, where the places you don't want to be. But some younger people are moving into the CBD. They have a place called Harbour Town on Mud Island. That's a man-made sort of area where they've built these newer housing over the last 10 or so years. And probably its most famous resident is Justin Timberlake. He lives there. And people go past his house, which he probably doesn't like all the time. What Memphis is best known for is Graceland. Unfortunately, if you're from Memphis, the young people there tend to wear as a badge of honour if they haven't been to Graceland. I do not understand why. I actually enjoyed it. Did you guys go to Graceland? You went too? I actually enjoyed it. Did you enjoy it? Yeah.
It was much smaller.
Much smaller? The house, wasn't it? Yeah, it's not huge.
I wouldn't call it a mansion.
Maybe Memphis style. But it's a great place to go because everything's kept as how he died back in the 70s. So nothing's been updated. It's actually quite unique. And it's a great place to go, and 600,000 people go there a year. And that certainly keeps Memphis alive with activity. Crime is at an all-time low, which is a good thing. I know one of the people I've spoken to today bought in Germantown. It is actually one of the safest cities in Memphis, which is great. So Helen's going to be happy with that. So it's a good place in terms of crime, which is on the way down. It is the 10 best cities for home buyers. Look, there's lots of stats out there about these places, but it's good to see that a lot of the major newspapers also are getting behind Memphis. it is very cheap to get in there. That's Jim and Debbie. They're the two owners of the company. Debbie's the actual lead broker, rules the roost, and they've been going since 1976, so they've been around a long, long time. They manage over 1,300 properties, and they have over 300 international investors. So they know what they're doing. I spoke to someone earlier who just got transferred over to them, their management, and they found the whole process very easy because there's a person they have there called a customer liaison, and that person deals with international clients. That's all they do. They don't manage properties, they just deal with you and me, working us through the system, answering our queries, basically being a quarterback. Anything we need, that person aid will go and find out for us and get the answer back to us. So it is more of a very customer service focused company. So they are big. They've got 39 full-time staff. They've got about another 20 on their maintenance team as well. So everything's handled in-house. They've actually just moved 2 weeks ago to a new premises. They have 3 offices around Memphis, but now they've got one massive office. It's about 1,900 square metres. It's huge. At the back of it is a warehouse. So because they renovate a house every day, they buy everything in bulk. So now they've just dumped it in the back of their warehouse. All the carpets, all the tiles, vanities, whatever it is, now they buy in bulk, which deliver a better result for us. They sold 249 properties last year, which is a big result, and that means they can buy in bulk and pass the savings on. These are the two guys who are over here. Brad Reed is the son of Jim, and then Tony is in Director of Sales. They're both graduates. They joke that he was the senior and Brad was a junior in uni. It's probably not the case, but funny anyway. As we've seen in the Memphis marketplace, look, it is steady, but it has a decline like everywhere else. So in the last few years, it hasn't done too well. They are seeing the foreclosures, though, drop off and starting to get a bit better, not as big as what they were in the last few years. Prices there haven't gone down a great deal, from 90,000 odd as an average down to about 70 odd thousand. So percentage-wise, it is only 20 to 30%. It's not a massive foreclosure state, but certainly they've had their fair share of foreclosures. The average property you're going to be buying in Memphis are generally going to be 1952 and newer construction. They're going to be money brick in Memphis, and they're going to be 3 to 4 bedrooms, generally 2 bathrooms, and up to 2-car garages, depending on where you are. They're going to have between 1,200 and 24 square metres of living as well, square feet of living. They also have duplexes, and we generally see a couple of those at least every month, and you'll get 2 to 3 bedrooms per side, 1 to 2 bathrooms and a garage, and again similar, maybe a little bit less square foot, like a townhouse. They look really like townhouses, 2 townhouses attached together, the ones we've seen. But they go very quickly. People want townhouses. They want these duplexes. This is a map of downtown Memphis. It's right on the river. Here's the river down here. Memphis, the city's over here. In terms of the areas probably not to invest in, which is what we call the urban core, look in this inner south area around here is pretty bad, and in the sort of north area as well are generally areas that people they tend to stay away from. That's where you're going to find smaller houses, houses where they're going to be boarded up. Rents are going to be sort of 400 to 550. And you're going to have variable returns on your properties. The areas where Memphis they try and invest are mainly in the southern part. In this area here called Westwood, and one of the best areas they like is a place called Whitehaven, which is Graceland's actually in Whitehaven. There's Graceland there, and this southern corridor. They like to try and get close to the airport because the airport is where all the jobs and ancillary jobs are. So they like the corridor in the southern part of the city, which is easy to get to the airport and where there's a much higher rental return. And the quality of tenant is much better than it is in the inner areas up here and up here. 2 other areas where people have invested a lot. One of them is a place called Raleigh, which is up here. That's where that Nike distribution centre is, and there is a lot of industry up in that area, and people like it. One area that some people are investing, and look, the rental management company, they manage a lot, is a place called Fraser, which is up in this area. That area there is a very hard area to manage. The quality of tenant is generally a bit lower, and you have to have a guerrilla management system in place to actually make a return there. You can have a really good run, but then you can also have some problems. So that's probably not as desirable. There are a lot of better areas to invest, but Fraser's sort of okay, but right on the, not urban core, but not far off. The areas which are new, you can actually buy in Memphis, brand new, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, double garage house on about a, say, 600 metre square block of land for about $105,000 right now. And that's going to be up in this area here, which is again a better area. And you get good returns, about $1,200 per month. That's brand new. They'll actually put the order in now. You won't have to pay until it's built 60 days later. They'll actually build it for you. That builder was the biggest builder in Memphis that went belly up, owing $50 million. Now the banks are trying to fund and get some of that debt back by making him build these properties. And one person here I know is bought in Germantown, which is down in this area down here, which again is more of a white-collar area. It's a more upmarket sort of area, Germantown, down in that area. This is an example of some of the properties you'll see. The more cladding properties are in Atlanta and the brick properties are more in Memphis. That's what you get, and one of the major differences in the areas. This is a typical Memphis type of property. It was sold last week for $49,900. It has rent of $795 per month, and that was a Section 8 tenant. The gross yield on that's 19.12. So you are getting on these little properties pretty good returns. This property was up in the Raleigh area on the top right near the Nike Distribution Centre. Unfortunately, the light's not fantastic, but when Memphis Investment do their rehab, it is a full rehab. New roofs, because one of the things that people don't understand about roofs over there, they're not the same tile roofs that we have here. These are asphalt shingle, and they're actually made out of a petroleum product, and they only have a life expectancy of 20 to 30 years. And so as these properties can be between 30 and 50 years, in every case they basically rip the roof off and put another roof on. It's not as expensive as putting one of our roofs on, that's for sure. And they do everything, new cabinets, new plumbing, electricals. They renovate these properties to a standard which is brand new. They don't want maintenance issues. And if they do have a maintenance issue, it's very easy for them to fix because all the people are on staff. They don't have to contract anything out. They're all internal. At the moment, you can buy these properties for $43 a square foot. And they're actually insured in Memphis for $90 a square foot. So like I said, you're buying for less than half the replacement cost of owning these properties. Here's another example, typical Memphis investment property. Again, fully redone. 62.9 is actually sold as well. But there's others similar on the wall. They're all fairly similar type properties. Gross yield, 17.64%. So you're getting a pretty big yield in these sort of places, which is a good thing. The management cost in Memphis is 8%, and they take half of 1 month's rent as a leasing fee, like most of the other places as well. So similar sort of scale. They do use Propertyware, so again, it's the online portal. Again, as Kim said, it's very easy to use, and you can get your statements online. Much better way of doing things. That's part of the team. As I said, they have a very large staff, but at 8% we mentioned that. Maintenance is done in-house, which I found is a really big plus. Some of the management firms are so small, they don't have anyone in-house. Everything is contracted out, and that does affect your net return. You don't think about it up front when you quote things on flyers and things like that, but it makes a big difference when you're holding that property for a period of time. The lower your ongoing costs, the higher the net return is really going to be to you. So that's why these guys, we love them. And they have everyone in-house. Over there, leasing is different than property management. Over here, when you get a property manager, they lease your property and then manage it. Over there, it's two separate things. You have specialists who just lease properties, and then you have a manager who does the ongoing management of the property. Has anyone got any questions about, the insurance in Memphis? As I mentioned before, they have a blanket coverage, covers $1 million liability, and you get a bulk discount because they're part of a bigger scheme. Does anyone have any questions about how the Memphis operates, or the types of properties they have there at the moment?
Have you just got the one management company?
No, we don't. We actually, as I mentioned before, we actually recently sacked one, and we got them actually to be bought out by one of our other ones, Reedy, but we also have another management group as well. That they've been fantastic as well. We actually have a couple of different suppliers there, but Reedy is the main one that we have. Yep, so we've got two at the moment. We had three, we're down to two. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay. What we're going to have a look at now is the Atlanta market. Memphis, again, is going to be cash flow. Even if when you're buying a property there, the brand new ones for 105, they are in the more upmarket area of town. So you are going to get the kickback, but you're not going to get massive capital growth. The area where you're going to get a lot of capital growth is going to be in Atlanta. What I'll do, I'm going to play this little video for you to give you a bit better overview of Atlanta. Just part of the video for those of you who haven't been to Atlanta.